Noon. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, lovely people. Thank you for coming to hear all about knititation, mindful knitting, and the daily ramblings of Dr. Thomas and myself, James McIntosh. We're what you call the Nibble duo, and first of all, Yarndale, thank you for organising such a fantastic event, even with live sheep, and for giving us the honour to speak, and for Shapiers for sponsoring today to allow us to be here. You see, if you lived in our house with Thomas and I, you would hear Shapiers mentioned a lot, because when we have our yarn night, which really is most nights when you have at least one member of the duo that's a self-confessed yarnaholic, we constantly admire and marvel at Shapiers, because the innovation that Anita and Yob as a team have done is absolutely brilliant with just colour. They say inspiration in every ball of yarn, and it is. But if you haven't already done so, make sure you visit the Shapiers stand just over there and notice the small details. Notice Easy Start, because this is clever, and how the graduation of colour works in a whirl. This is absolute genius. Meet a whirlette. They will become your best friend for your second sleeve, and then join one of the not to be missed after parties. So thank you, Yarndale and Shapiers. But before we start properly, I'm obliged to read the following statement. Medical disclaimer. Participation in knititation and mindfulness-based interventions is entirely voluntary. Neither McIntosh Publishing nor the authors or Dr. Thomas Ernst can be held responsible for any wanted or unwanted effects through participation in knititation or mindfulness. If you have any queries, please contact your doctor first. So there you have it. Please contact your doctor before knitting. We are filming and we will be taking photos throughout, so as long as you're fine with that, come and see us afterwards in the hub, where we'll be doing a book signing, and we've got some other goodies going on. Well, now we've got all that over. I'm James, and this is Dr. Thomas Ernst, or Tommy to me, him indoors. So tell me, where do you hide your stash? Come on. Well, so you're everywhere. Wardrobe, I've done that at an accident when I tried to get it off the top. What about you?
Under the spare bed.
Spare bed, we've done that. Attic, we don't have one in a flat. You see, we have a little problem at home in our domestic life, because Thomas, who's of German extraction, he hears the doorbell go, bing bong, and I just look a little bit sheepish, and then Tommy arrives into our den with that, holding these flat packages, and I just know what's in there. And he's sort of looking sheepish, but he's 53, so he's past the sheepish side, but he's getting there still. And he goes, "Nicht more wohl, James, nicht more wohl, we are drowning in the wool." I'm expected to feel bad, but he doesn't know the balls of joy that arrived in my life at this point. You see, Thomas doesn't know the half of it, nor does Tommy really understand the pure need for more and more yarn. Am I right?
Yes.
You see, he doesn't understand yes, you can sit down, why I need both the DK and the worsted weight of this particular colourway. It all has to go into my stash. Thomas just doesn't appreciate that I've actually been thoughtful and caring and loving, because I didn't buy the Aran weight in that particular colourway as well. You see, my stable is my stash acquired beyond life expectancy. Talking about stables. But just how much do I need? I suppose a little extra for darning, as if that's going to happen. But it's not about buy what you need, really, is it? No, it's about that delicious soft colour that you can taste. For knitting that idea that you have had at Yarndale today, that you are really promising yourself you're going to get round to doing, but you never really will you? But this isn't to be discussed in polite society. After all, we are British. Congratulations. You see, yes, I have filled under my side of the divan bed. I've done it in the spare bedroom as well. on top of the wardrobe. Had an accident on the kick step when trying to get it down one day, say no more. And I've got me den, and then Thomas discovered something at our last talk which caused a bit of a problem at home. You see, in Newcastle upon Tyne at a yarn show, I declared in public that I had been very creative in taking the side off the bath. Because it's amazing how much yarn, it's clean and dry onto the bath and there's no moths. So Thomas then took the side off the bath to find how much yarn I had, and then Thomas couldn't get the side back on the bath again. But then again, I do have the best dressed doctor in the hospital for the winter time. Thank you. So what's in your needles, Dr. Thomas?
Patience.
Patience.
No yarn.
Patience. You get it? They call it German humour. So hands up, who suffers from a syndrome? I do. After all, it's fashionable in this day and age to have at least one syndrome to talk about in an outing or a dinner party, and we're on an outing. Constantly in my life, I suffer from... Come on in, Vicky. Constantly in my life, I suffer from... Come on in, bring them in. Bring them in. Constantly in my life, I suffer roughly on once every 2 weeks from second sleeve syndrome. It's nothing but an agitation. It's a lack of willpower and a real contributing factor to my growing work in progress stash. So back to my second sleeve syndrome. I always start with intentions, with joy, excitement about these new yarn colours. Then I have to break in onto the bath to get the second sleeve. Knitting up my sweaters is easy. It's back, front, 2 sleeves, before the neckband and so up. And I'm just sort of lost on this second sleeve. But you see, I put them in this bag called my work in progress. I personally believe I have one knitting project when you can have 32 on the go at once. Why? Own the power of it, name it and claim it and own it. On many occasions, I've told Thomas not to comment about my work in progress, my WIPs, because he comes into my den and he goes, "Could you finish something, please, James?" Now, I do, in my own way, at my own time, mindfully. And he'll go, "James, I've got all these bags. Are we going to finish them?" You see, Dr. Thomas himself has a syndrome. It's called yarn myopia. Dr. Thomas can't see the difference in one ball of wool and 20. He just sees wool. Then I get my whip out, using my Northern Irish accent to my advantage, and I pass over the H and whip, threaten Thomas with the whip, and all is fine again. You see, with Thomas's yarn myopia, it's really hashtag should have gone to Specsavers, Dr. Thomas. But there's these other knitting syndromes that we've come across. Second sock syndrome is just like second sleeve syndrome. Does anybody have it? Yeah. The only difference is there's a little bit of DNA, because you know of those German short rows you have to do in your heel? That sort of mutates this one a little bit. Then there's chronic knitting syndrome, which I do have. It's when you fall asleep with your knitting, you do your knitting, you fall asleep and you're waking up the next morning and you have to redo 3 rows before you have your coffee because you've hit it on the side of your pillow. First sock syndrome, I don't like this one, because this is when you've been asked to knit something for someone else and they've chosen the wool and you're just not living the colour, you know. I call this Project Toad. Trashed object abandoned in disgust. Then there's this too nice to knit with syndrome, you know, where you find that and you just smell it and you feel it and you look at it, and this is commonly known as yarn porn. It's not turning out as I envisaged, so I'm going to put it into one side and just hope it'll transform syndrome. This is called denial. And we all have it. It's also a contributing factor to yarn hoarding. Rip it out and start again. And finally, we've got the biggest syndrome of them all, and it's called ProBlue. Projects beyond life expectancy. Talking about syndromes, I want to tell you about the story of my wellness through wool and hand knitting. You see, knitting saved my life. Hands up who knows someone who suffered from depression, anxiety, ADHD, OCD, the lot. And if you haven't, you know somebody who has? Indeed. Statistics in the charity Mind say that 1 in 4 people in England and Wales will suffer at least once in every given year. So that's more than 1 in 4. I am not ashamed that I suffered. And I am proud that I can stand here today and talk about it. I always believed that someone suffering from depression needed a good kick up the proverbial and be told to get back on with life. I honestly did. That's until it happened to me. I was diagnosed with a moderately severe depressive episode. What, life-loving me, this didn't make any sense. At the time I woke up, I was 35, and I could not move my leg down the bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I was not lazy. I just could not move. Things had bottled up, one thing after another, and when the final snap came, I'd been publicly betrayed in my native Northern Ireland. It was too much to bear. Fear, anxiety, a catatonic physical state where I couldn't move, panic, black, very, very black. You see, if you've not been through the midlife crisis, take note, because you get one chance, so make it worth something. Make it spectacular, because when you fall, it needs to be memorable, because you're not going to do it again. Mine was, like me, just fabulous. So much so, some of it was in primetime TV. Meanwhile, while I was breaking, I was also breaking the mould. I've never done anything normally. I spent my gap year in Siberia. I mean, when you grow up on a farm in Northern Ireland, where else do you go? Siberia. I used to win many ploughing competitions as a teenager. Indeed, ploughing. On a John Deere tractor. I had lovely furrows. I used to win barrels of oil for them. Other not normal things, I was born on a fabulous day. It was the 16th of May, 1978, the day that YMCA entered the British charts, it happened. And I used to present food TV in China. You see, when you go through depression, you can count on less than 5 fingers who your friends are at that point in time. When you go through trouble and hardship, when the light's gone out of your house, when the laughter leaves, there's only 1 or 2 people in your life. I had Dr. Thomas. When you're self-employed and you're paralysed to bed, you lose your business. And then the banks come and they want their pound of flesh. I lost the sports car. I'd worked damned hard for it. I lost the sports car, but I found the older model in the form of Dr. Thomas, so I wasn't doing the midlife crisis normally. Dr. Thomas does not look good in a bikini, but great in a raglan. By the way, I know these are set-in sleeves today. My head was the deepest black. I had no energy. I was only 35. The depths of sadness in me was too much to bear. I could not sleep. I could not eat. I could not function. I had lost me. And through all of it, I kept going like this. Is this familiar? You waking up in the morning and you just go like this. I call it the fear. All I could do every day to calm and stop this anxiety and pain was to stay in bed with the duvet over me, including August, and lie there hiding from the world, watching Netflix on my iPad. This was not a life. I spent a whole year in bed. I could not get out of bed. Thomas loved me. He loved me through it, and as a doctor himself, Thomas was aware that I was acutely ill. I was conscious I was wasting my life. I felt deep, deep shame from this. I was a distant shadow of myself. My life was wasting away. I did not know what to do, or if I did, I didn't have the energy to do it. I felt no reward. At least, if I lived in Dr. Thomas's native Germany, I would have been given the title of Frau Doktor, or doctor's wife, which I was given in the UK. I mean, I was lumbered with this title as the doctor's wife, because there is no equivalent in British English. And the doctor's partner is fine. But it was a homophobic slur to call me the doctor's wife in society. See, the old boys' club in the UK is inherently cruel. And more business is done at the dinner table and in the boardroom. I was thankful I studied for a Master of Arts in Home Economics and used to work in the Good Housekeeping Institute. I was the original Mr. Menopausal Monthly. That's what we called good housekeeping. But you see, the non-defined gender roles of today's society saved the day in many ways. I'd been very successful. I'd built up a great career. I was the only Westerner to ever present food television in China. I was getting 100 million viewers a week on my TV shows in China. I won the equivalent of a BAFTA in China, remembering it's communist. And to get this as a Westerner was huge. I was also the global ambassador for Aga and Rangemaster cookers. I launched them all over the world, USA, Europe, and I was the man that brought the Great British Cooker to China. And because of all of this, in 2012, Lord Sebastian Coe at the Farmers Weekly Awards in the Dorchester Hotel in Park Lane presented me with the gold medal as Britain's Food Ambassador of the Year. I did it. I'd worked hard, I'd achieved it. Dr. Thomas Ernst he's a senior consultant physician in a very large teaching hospital in central London. Thomas meditates for 3 hours a day, every day. I think back to Lady Di and I think, there's 3 of us in this marriage and it's sometimes just a little bit crowded. But Thomas's dedication to the practice of mindfulness, it's a blessing. And it shows its fruits in our lives, both together and separate. He's the only NHS consultant that we know of that operates a mindfulness clinic to treat chronic illness and pain. His inpatients are geriatrics. His outpatients are related to autonomics. So that's faints, blackouts, dizzy spells to you and me. His hours are so long and demanding. But through my illness, Thomas would literally carry me into the bathroom so I could perform the most simple of tasks. I was very, very ill. I felt ashamed. I could not function. I honestly don't know how you kept your career and acted as my carer.
Difficult, challenging. I don't want to bore you too long. It's much more enjoyable to listen to James, I realise that. But I just want to brief words on depression. I mean, depression is pretty much a stigmatized disease. It's a disease recognized in the medical profession, psychiatry professions. It's listed in the ICD, and it's got specific features that we need to meet and treatments. So it's not just a low mood or pull yourself together kind of thing. It's a serious condition, and many of you are probably aware of that. How hard is it to live with someone with depression? Well, if you are trying to do a 12-hour job a day and then coming home and then doing the housework, the shopping, the cleaning, arranging bills, payments, and the rest of it, so you really have got 2 jobs at hand, which is quite challenging and tiring. So sometimes only about 3-4 hours sleep. I mean, people who've got children probably know what that feels like, but it is quite tough when you're trying to then the following day sort of try and at least pretend to save lives. And so that's where I developed mindfulness as a tool that I use to regain my strength and catch up on recuperation rather than sleep. And it worked really well. So that's, it always didn't start with 3 hours. It started with 10 minutes here and there. It didn't have 3 hours in the beginning. But then so after time, you just simply realize actually the more you practice it, the easier life becomes. So that's really where I'm now at. So I'll let you carry on listening to James' exciting story. There we go.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas.
Can't reach further over here, I'll let the camera don't see you.
Thank you. In my illness, Thomas sent Ward's sister round to visit me, Suzanne. She's got a Southern Irish brogue. While I was trying to learn to knit, she said, stick the right one into the loop on the left, turn it round, pull it off, next, and we go again. Sister in the geriatrics ward knows something about the wellness of handing a ball of yarn to a demented patient. You see, when somebody's got dementia and there's screams of anguish in a hospital ward, they're reliving their fears. They may be rational fears or irrational fears, but it doesn't matter. They're fears. Thomas says we must all confront our fears to move on, either into another part of our life or to leave this life. And this is understandably daunting. It's people like Sister and Thomas that make the NHS the treasure that it is. We are lucky with it. We must protect it and we must encourage therapeutic knitting into the NHS, a thing we call social prescribing, with other medications. And that's our job, is to go and start a wee knitting group in the doctor's surgery. Because it's not just about conditions, and it's about the lonely people that come to the doctors too. There's so many people, arthritis, and Betsan here can tell you more later, that can benefit from hand knitting. But I don't remember really why I started to knit, but I was in bed watching Netflix, getting fed up with it, and I found 2 chopsticks and a ball of string. I watched a bit of the YouTube, learned to cast on and produced and knitted something or other. I showed it to Thomas and he says, oh, let's get the folia. I started to knit a jumper on 12mm needles, you know the big boys. In beige alpaca. It's an itchy bloody thing. This is my first attempt. I couldn't read a pattern. This was meant to be my size. Oh, got a wee problem under the armhole. But I'm so proud of that jumper. I would never wear it in public. I'm proud of that one. See, the resulting product is ever somewhat shapeless. It looks like a yurt or a teepee. But that lives as a trophy to my good health at the back of my wardrobe and will forever. Do you know why? Why it'll live? Because the moths never eat the ugly items. I remember putting this misshapen thing on my body and looking in the mirror one day and feeling so proud of me again. Albeit looking like a grown-up Von Trapp child with knitted curtains for outfit. But I thirsted colour in so many ways. I had self-worth because I had made this. But beige was as bright as my head could cope with colour at this point. But colour is healing, colour is life, colour is excitement. But this was as bright as my head could go. But it wasn't the black it was 3 weeks ago. My first knitted garment allowed me to love myself again. I felt human, a deeply precious and intimate feeling that Northern Irish homophobia and stereotypes in society had stripped from me. Just with that drip, drip, drip all my life. I was left feeling worthless. I phoned my mum one day and I said, Mum, my head's like a metal box and the hammers inside won't stop banging. You see, with depression, one's silence is the loudest noise because it never ever stops. Mums are great ladies. Mum flew from our farm in the middle of Northern Ireland, who doesn't like flying, to London, to Peckham, the posh part where we live. We started to talk. Mum managed to get me out my front door. Then the next day to the end of the street. I started to get better. We went to John Lewis. Mum knit the ribs. I did the stocking stitch. Dr. Thomas put it in the boil wash. I had to start again, both this boiled washed item and my career. You see, the tablets were kicking in at this point. A doctor's wife and antidepressants. Oh, stereotypes are wrong, tough and hard in this country. So I thought, okay then, come on. I can get out of my house with the annual society summer club to go to. It was at the back of Lambeth Palace. You know where the Archbishop of Canterbury lives? It was very nice. I went in my tuxedo, brought me knitting. It's amazing at these highly boring events where you're supposed to go, oh, tally-ho, look at the weather, you know. When you bring your knitting out, there is no small talk. There's actually real talk. I became very popular in the group. But through all of this and this time, my mind was racing. It would not stop. It got faster and faster and faster. Cold sweats were a reality. That tender little flame that's my soul was oxidizing in the naked air. And it was deeply painful as it was kicked by these stereotypes and homophobia. That little flame was nearly blown out. You see, that one stitch and then another, it gave me a sense of calm quite quickly. A creation was growing that I had made and a reason for me to be proud. To find my circadian rhythm. This is called your circadian rhythm, and everyone's is different. It is the rhythm of your body. Each stitch became a breath. Each breath became a feeling. Each feeling was understood and acknowledged. Each stitch is a tangible part of a knitted item, because if that stitch is not there or is broken, the whole thing falls apart. And when I realized that my thoughts and feelings were worth something, like those stitches, because society had told me, because I was gay growing up in Northern Ireland, and because my partner, I was a doctor's wife, because those stitches were real and worth something, that I was worth something. And this is basic psychotherapy. The tablets are not a quick fix or happy pills. If you need them, take them. There is no shame in it. There is no rush to come off them if you're on them. Thomas and I get lots and lots of emails, and thank you for sending them. We do welcome them and we try to reply to everyone. But we get questions like, how do I get off my antidepressants? Well, if you're thinking that way, stay on them. That's not Thomas speaking medically. That's me from having been there. You'll be ready when you know. It's not a race and nobody needs to know. They do not give you a quick fix. They give you a middle C, a baseline, a lattice on which to stand. They help you stand up, but they don't get you better. This is where you come in with your knitting. You get side effects too. I had dreams that were vivid yet so cathartic. Metallic tastes, enlarged tummy. But slowly, as these knitted items grew from my needles, my confidence was growing too. The tatters of my mind were being knit together, one stitch at a time. I was able to leave our home again. I was able to have a life. I remember seeing a snowdrop in February, and it wasn't the fact that it was up in the cold. Do you know what hit me about the snowdrop? There's a wee yellow bit inside, and colour was coming back again. I was a living, functional creature like this snowdrop in February. I was able to talk about my feelings, a thing that men cannot do. We are built differently, and we cannot talk about our feelings. Because I was always told mine were wrong, and that I had to be the Yorkie bar check shirt brigade that had that Gillette razor with a chiseled chin, and that woman kissing me here when I wanted the German there. Which Gillette, thankfully, this year rebranded and called it toxic masculinity. We are all built different, and I'm a softer man, and I am proud that I'm a softer sort of man. But I learnt that my feelings were mine and that they were not wrong. It's just a pity it took to the age of 38 to learn this. All those years that I could have been living in freedom, where I had to listen to other people's stuff. A stitch in time saved my mind, and we call this Knititation. Knititation is a mindfulness project, a mindfulness practice that brought joy back to my life through hand knitting. It allowed me to see in colour again. Thomas came home one night and noticed that I had done the laundry. I was able to do something again. I was not exactly better at this stage, but I was starting to regain a little bit of my normal function. I was getting better, the stitches were growing on my needles, and I'm proud to say I am better, whatever that means. I'm waking up at 6 o'clock every day, and I have a purpose again. But I say whatever that means about better, because the most boring party you can go to is one full of normal people. Because normal is grey, and there is no fun. And I love this bit of the spectrum, and I'm on it, and I don't know where I am, but I've got my life back. How did I get better? Knititation, my mindfulness practice using hand knitting. Holding 2 needles in front of me gave me support. It allowed a barrier between myself and someone else, a safety net to get better. Now, I read this, and this is Betsan Corkill, everybody, and Betsan wrote this amazing book called Knit for Health and Wellness. And this is the text for what Thomas and I were able to pick up and do next. Thank you, Betsan. You see, every author feels really chuffed when they get an email from someone who's read their book. And Betsan said to me, we were talking about the fear and anxiety bit, and Betsan said, hold your needles in front of you, because this gives you extra space and you have protection. Betsan did not say this, but I know it gives me 2 weapons. Betsan, thank you for being there and helping Thomas and I in this journey. Your work allowed me really to find my own self-worth again. Thank you. See, the anxiety had stopped when I was knitting, and if you've ever had anxiety, you will know it is real, but it is not rational. My anxiety was sitting on the bus in London on the top of the double-decker, and I honestly believed someone was going to come behind me and slit my throat here. I knew it was a load of nonsense, but it was so real that the cold sweats were running down my back. But holding these needles protected me because I was able to do my stitches. And it has got me past all of that. My head was calm. I realised that one stitch is a breath, next stitch is a feeling, that stitch is tangible, my feelings and thoughts are tangible, and if that stitch is away, the garment folds apart. So all of this is real. So my feelings were an integral part of me. But I was never good at this traditional mindfulness hippie mumbo-jumbo stuff that Dr. Thomas went on about. Light incense, sniff and burn. You see, I'm a fidgeter. I'm not very good at sitting still and being in the present and just breathing and all of this malarkey. Embrace the negatives, Dr. Thomas would say to me. Learn to love them. What a load of rubbish. I didn't want to do this. It was too painful and daunting. Moreover, I didn't understand what he was on about. I mean, negatives are not nice things, and personally, I don't know about you, but I am not into mental sadomasochism. I had enough of this mental pain through my depression. So I spent many arguments shunning the advice of Thomas, which you know what that led to? Yak, yak, yak. Does this sound familiar? Yeah. I wanted some peace and quiet, so I gave in. Said, Thomas, all right, how do we do this mindfulness stuff again? While I was thinking negatives, about embracing the negatives, and if only then I learnt that 2 negatives made a positive. Thomas explained mindfulness again. My head was not able to concentrate on this because I'm a fidgeter. Thomas suggested mindful movements. Picture the scene. In our living room in the posh part of Peckham, Thomas puts on a CD of a man called Clive. Clive's a monotone voice. Clive introduces himself, gets me to freshen up, and I'm bored at this point, right? He starts to tell me what to do. How rude! But this monotone voice continues. One leg in the air, looking like a flamingo in full ninja mode. I continued. Next thing, Clive is instructing me to lie on my belly on the carpet with my legs up in the air and my head up like this. And I'm thinking, how very rude. He tells me at this point that I'm now in the position of the lower cobra, not to be confused with the Kama Sutra. And I start thinking of Indian cobra beer. My nose hits the rug. I start to laugh. He's not impressed. I ask if the Dyson was broken because I could smell dust in the rug. Mindful movements were not for me. But when was the last time you moved mindfully? Simple things like made your cup of tea mindfully, tie your shoelaces mindfully, mindfully walk down your hall or brush your teeth, or mindfully feel the rays of the sun on the back of your neck. Lots of wee seconds make a big project. You see, just actively feel the sensations of your body while you're doing all these everyday tasks that we take for granted. Because when you feel the sensations of your body, you're saying, hello me, and it's healing. This is being in the present in a very small bit. It's what they call mindfulness in a very basic way. And it doesn't involve sniffing carpets. Just feeling and acknowledging what is in the present while embracing it. And if that involves a negative coming in and you have a wee shudder, let it happen, because it's done and it's over. Your body knows how to deal with it. Your body has the answers. Panic subsides, anxiety subdues, and your worry is dealt with by your body. I learned the body has the answers. It's about spending time with your body. That's all it is. But how we do that is different for everyone. I was scared to spend time with my body because I was told everything in my body was wrong through these stereotypes and homophobia. Hand knitting is the same because as feeling these sensations, because for me, to hold the needles and feel the yarn running through my fingers, feel my feet on the floor, my bum on the seat, and my back against the chair, and consciously feel these things, this is what we call knititation. And as thoughts run through my mind, I let them happen. Because if there's a scary negative comes up, I am aware that this, because I'm right-handed the way I knit. And don't start about English and continental knitting when we're coming up to Brexit, because it doesn't matter. So, holding those needles in my hands, the future for me as I'm a right-handed knitter is here on this needle, and this is the past. And if I get a shudder of a negative or a panic, I do another stitch and it's gone. This is knititation. You see, the market was barren for men knitting at this point. Many knitting patterns said, knit for your man. Really? All this to find a jumper in colour that was not baggy. You know, they'll do a lot of baggy jumpers for men. We stopped wearing those in the 1990s. We like fitted things now. I didn't want to look like Val Doonigan in a knitted cardigan on the front of a gospel LP. I didn't. I wanted to look like something in Superdry. I wanted to look like something that was on the high street that men of my age wear. I wanted colour. So I had to fix this. So I had less than £20 in my pocket by the time I was able to stand up again after depression. So I lost my business. The bank take their share awful quickly. I could have asked Thomas for money, but I wanted to earn my own. I wanted back on my feet. It's about self-worth. I wrote Knit and Nibble and I crowdfunded it. Wow. It went viral. I found a photographer, located a bit of sponsorship, found an editor, located models, wrote the marketing plan. I needed to be brave enough to knit in public. I knit in planes, tubes, trains, in nightclubs. On Sunday nights you can see me sitting near the drag queen in the Vauxhall Tavern knitting. I knit in the N36 night bus, and I taught the Chinese army to knit as well. I did. I designed jumpers that are fitted. I can now write knitting patterns. Not to mention I opened my own publishing company, McIntosh Publishing, and found distribution for my book and products. Because of this Kickstarter, messages arrived. Handwritten. When did you last get a handwritten letter? It got a wee bit busy. Thanking me for being honest about talking about this, because nobody talks about depression because people consider it shame. And it's not. It's real life. You see, this subject is not easy to talk about. And if I've never done anything normally in my life, I'm going to talk about this. Depression is a cancer of the mind, and from my experience, I call it that because it does not discriminate, because it eats everything that's healthy. You see, love flows through knitting needles, and blame is one of the things that my native Northern Ireland does very well. It's what's led it to its present-day situation. I'm sure we can all agree with that and explain and accept that blame is not a new concept. Blame with my journey of mental health does not fix things. Blame needs revenge. That's how the human is built. But through my knititation, I was able to turn this anger and want for revenge around. He would say, don't fight and the whole thing changes. What a load of nonsense I was saying whenever I was talking about the betrayal I had in Northern Ireland that was rather public. I wanted to fight back. But as I progressed through knititation, I learnt a few things. Firstly, Michael Jackson was right. The only way you can change the world is to look in the mirror and change that man that's looking at you. So I developed my stress reduction garter stitch squares. It's quick and easy, and you can punch through and knit your stress away. And it works. That got rid of my anger. I had to turn all of this, what happened, into something good. So I had to learn painfully to swallow my own pride. I put half my stitches onto a stitch holder, divided, and I turned my neck. That's a good one, isn't it? So I produced a book in colour. Developed knitting accessories that were gender neutral, because everything was feminine on the market. Jumpers that were fitted and not baggy. Recipes. Could you hold that for me, please? Recipes to nibble at knitting club, and some games to play with yarn too. Why did I do it gender neutral, gender for everybody? Because if I was caught in this doctor's wife thing, I'm a bloke. I'm the doctor's partner. I've watched society so long, they put people in boxes. Surely gender's the biggest lie of life, because all it says is I can't, you're not allowed, or you're not able. So I wanted to get past this. We have a how to knit section. Come and have a look at it. We start off by knitting dishcloths to learn your stitches. How would you display a dishcloth? This is Nathan, our lodger. I wanted a book that helped men with self-image, that took away from the Instagram generation. We have other dishcloth examples too for the stitches. I've 30 knits. I've colour-coded. You follow your wee Haribo gummy bear, that's where I got the inspiration through it. I've done it differently. You can come and have a look later. Recipes to nibble at knitting club. And I sent it into the World Cookbook Awards. The most innovative cookbook in the world, in front of 190 countries, was bestowed upon my work. I was in China for the awards. Why is it when you're on the big stage that the Gwyneth Paltrow moment starts and you just cry? Well, that was my relief. We're in the top 3 for the British Knitting and Crochet Awards. Thank you for voting for me. We find out next week on the 6th. Thank you. Why did I aim at men yet keep it gender neutral? Well, there was a huge gap in the market. A huge one. The outcomes with men with mental health are not so good, often resulting in suicide. Because we cannot talk. I had to do something good, so with the money that I got from crowdfunding, I sent it home to Northern Ireland. I found the printers of the Good Friday Agreement, and it was printed by them in Northern Ireland, and it was bound on the Shankill Road. Northern Ireland caused me such problems with this that I knew the only way to win was to use the money that was blessed on me to send home to bless the people of home. And it was not easy to pay that money, but I did it. And it gave me my freedom. Love flows through knitting needles. I'm no longer depressed. But I do have some days when my anxiety is bad. But I've learnt to knit through it. Thomas and I had we're having a really tragic time at the minute. We decided to go to Tel Aviv Pride for our holiday this year. Tel Aviv's amazing. And the aeroplane landed and we found out that Thomas's mum had passed away and we were stuck in Israel. What do you do? Jerusalem is the most fabulous city if you want to grieve, actually. It was a beautiful day. We go to Germany, we say our goodbyes. We get back to London and my mum is diagnosed with cancer. Now these are tsunami events that hit us all in our lives. And the statistics are clear that when you've had a mental problem, you are likely to have it again. But it has not hit me again as long as I practice my Knititation every day. Knit and Nibble's gone global. It's coming out in a few languages and it's now being done in a Japanese manga comic. I know. I can't wait to see Dr. Thomas's Hello Kitty. We've been on Sky News, The Telegraph, Daily Mail, BBC. It's been what we've received has been a blessing. We're also on a new series on one of the main terrestrial channels coming out in January about our work. Every day I just say thank you right now. What have I learnt? I've learnt that the role of the doctor's wife is the same as the vicar's wife. I've learned that the term wife is not correct for any of us because we're the partner, because we deal with every cut and bruise and birth and death and everything in between with the support that we have to give because they can't do it on their own. I've learned that the biggest negative that I found was not being able to talk about the negative or recognize the negative. 2 negatives make a positive. Embracing the negatives is not a scary process. After all, they are in the past, they're over. And my new stitches are on this needle here. What have I found? Oh, I found my best friend through Knititation. I like him. He's all right. He's worth getting to know. Become very close to him. I've learned to love him. I wish he would stop smoking, but he will do in time. I found my best friend was me. And that Whitney Houston was right. Learning to love yourself is the greatest gift of all, because when you can do that, no matter what anybody says, no matter how they criticize you, or no matter how they try to put you in a box, no one can take away that dignity of self-worth you found. My dreams, I can have again. I can have them again. My hopes are becoming a reality. Life's good. My mum's 3/4 way through chemo. She's managed to keep most of her hair. These things are important. Her cancer markers fell hugely this week. She's going to make it. But it's been like this. Life's good. Dr. Thomas has learnt not to put a knitted item into the boil wash. I can stand up in front of people and I can say, I am James McIntosh. And I am alive and I am well because of Knititation. A stitch in time saved my mind. Thank you for supporting us. You are fabulous.